5:15, and the first business we have to do is we need to do additions and
Can you folks be quiet out there?
They're trying to start the meeting, so we're asking for quiet out here so everyone can hear. Okay, there's
Just proceed in your big boy voice.
Yeah.
Or big girl. I'm sorry.
Use
your omniscient servant voice.
called to order, and the first item of business is additions, deletions to the agenda. And I will require a motion. We've had a request to remove agenda item 4, reports, and 5, financials. The purpose being to not delete them, but to skip over them. They were in your packet, so you've probably had a chance to see them already. If you have any questions, you can direct the questions to whoever was responsible for writing the report after the meeting. And the reason we are doing that is an addition to the agenda, a presentation by Judge Crawford and Attorney Aaron Landau to the time previously allotted for agenda items 4 and 5. So
I would move approval of the agenda as amended.
as amended, additions and deletions. And that was Jerry. There's second?
Yeah, so if they wanted to.
Second.
Okay,
If there's room here.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the agenda is changed. Now, we're going to announcements.
Do we have any conflicts with potential?
Oh, conflicts is next, right? Okay, does any board member have any conflict of interest? No, none. Okay, now announcements. Now, I'm not going to shout. So, please, everyone, thank you for your interest in the library. This is a public meeting. Doing the best I can. Public meeting and not a public hearing. In an effort to allow this board to complete our work, we will be setting some time constraints on public input. We may have to shut that door.
It sounds like people quiet.
We are at this point devoting 15 minutes to public comment. Now, there are public comments somewhere out there that people can fill out. And when you're called upon to make a comment, you will direct your comments or questions to the chair, and you will receive an answer if possible for that. And speakers will be limited. Hi, Natalie. Will be limited to 3 minutes each. And comments are now starting at 5:20.
So let's do first come, first serve off your list and we'll just do it.
You want to go off the list or off of these?
Since those didn't come in first come, first serve.
They
order.
did. These were the first ones in the
Yep,
bottom.
let's start with that. Okay.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go off with this.
Yeah.
Okay. Sandy Curbo, there you are.
First.
First.
All righty. Do you want to start?
My comment's gonna take about 2 minutes.
To push play.
I did. I will start by saying that we are not a country that bans or burns books. Would you agree with me? My worldview is through a biblical lens. You may not share my worldview, but Jesus died and rose for you too. He has given us free will to choose the path we wish to follow. Parents, grandparents, great-grandparents have a responsibility to love, teach, and guide the children entrusted to them. We have rated movies, parental controls on TVs, cell phones, and computers. There are books we don't want our children introduced to, while there are parents that want certain information made known to their children. It's freedom of choice. The library is full of categories to choose from. And I respectfully request the LGBTQ+ is put into a category that only parents have access to. Thank you.
Elizabeth Lambert.
Wait a minute. Shoot, good minute. Thank you. I know. Here's two more.
You know, there are many benefits for our children to have LGBTQ books. And we need to focus on that because the children, all children, they need to, everything we do needs to be inclusive. They need to be valued the same as heterosexual. We are a society that is growing, and we're growing greatly in that direction because the barriers are starting to break. And one thing, you know, a big thing about this, when we don't allow our children access to these books, they know that they are different. They know they're not valued. And then we push a suicide rate. And that's sick. You know, I can think of the youngest LGBTQ child I know in our county that died. He was 10 years old when he suicided. And right now, as I speak, I have 3 minutes. And in that 3 minutes, 4 children, not adults, are going to try to commit suicide. And that is what we're doing by limiting their access to books. We are setting them up for failure. You know, you're making an informed decision to increase suicide. And we don't want that. If you would set your own children up for suicide, you know, that's a mental illness. Why would you want to set up any other child in our state, in our county, anywhere to commit suicide? And right now, in Oregon, the percentage of LGBT individuals is 23%. And that was, I believe, 2017, the research 15 through 17. And prior to that, it was significantly lower, and it just keeps increasing. And that's not because of bad parenting or anything else. It's because people feel that they have, even children, they have the right to be the person God made. Our parents made the host. God put the soul in the body, and it's innate. It's not a desire. And here's a really good wonderful thing. I wish I had enough for everybody. And it truly needs to be read. LTB youth are not inherently prone to suicide risk because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, but rather placed at higher risks because of how they are mistreated and stigmatized in society. Why do we want to stigmatize children and set them up for suicide? How does that benefit us? How does, you know, compared to mass murder, how does it benefit
Elizabeth,
us when our children are
time's
mass murdered? Thank you for the time. And 3 minutes, 4 children trying to commit suicide. And please, I really would like it if you guys could read those.
Over here. Oh, okay.
What's the name?
Jamie.
Jamie.
The library board, I would like to touch on the attempt by some of our community members to have the LGBTQ+ books housed somewhere out of reach of children in a separate section or both. I am a queer inclusion educator. It is literally my job to teach gender and sexuality to doctors, teachers, nonprofit leaders, community members, etc. What I know is that you cannot make a child trans or gay. Children are who they are. It is becoming increasingly clear to me that these community members do not understand not only the difference between gender and sexuality, but the developmental stages of children. You know what would have and still could help with that? Some diverse books. According to the AAP, kids come into an awareness of their gender between 3 and 5 years old. This was true for both of my transgender children as well as my cisgender son. It was astoundingly easy for me to find books for my son that I could read to him or he could read to himself that reflected his lived experience and showed him that he could be the hero of the story. It wasn't until my younger two children had almost outgrown their need or want for me to read to them before I found books that did the same. I cannot express to you how valuable it is for children to not only be able to see themselves as the main character, but for them to see that other types of children get to be the main character too, and to learn about all of the different types of people that live in the world and in their own communities. There is nothing about LGBTQ children's books, drag queens, or transgender people that is inappropriate. Plenty of children have gay parents. Plenty of kids have trans people in their lives or are trans themselves. I am not asking if this is appropriate. I am telling you that it is. Not only from my lived experience, but with my education and my role in the community. We have already established as a nation that separate is not equal and that discrimination isn't okay. And I am intrigued and appalled that in 2022, people are still teaching their children that these things are acceptable and modeling this type of bullying and bigotry. Children being able to see themselves reflected in books not only increases their love of reading, helps them read better and sooner, but helps integrate them into their role in society. By insinuating that children need to be protected from this type of material, you're insinuating that there is only one type of child that is worth protecting and several types of children that are not. Is that really the message that you want to send? These identities and this information, despite popular opinion, are not actually up for debate. Public libraries are there for the entire public. Their role is not to dictate who is and who is not worthy of representation, to enforce bigotry, or to censor materials because their patrons are uneducated and afraid. I am so thankful that our library is full of people who want to do the right thing and that y'all understand that all of the citizens in our small community deserve representation and acceptance, and that is a precedent worth continuing.
Thank you. You have time to spare.
I try to be respectful.
Barbara View. Barbara View.
She's right
Oh,
here.
right. Hi.
Hi, my name is Barbara View, and I'm a concerned resident of Crook County and a grandparent. One little snippet I'd like to say is whoever talks, I'd like to have them say if they're a Crook County resident or not, just to FYI. I'm not for banning books. I'm against it. The First Amendment of our United States Constitution has the First Amendment that doesn't put limits on it, but we put limits on it, like life-threatening hate speech. We can't do that. We also have the Second Amendment, which gives the right to purchase and bear arms. Yet children can't buy a gun or play with a loaded gun in the neighborhood. Also, we're required to register guns when we buy them. I'm trying to show that our rights have certain limits and restrictions for the safety of others. The public library also has rights to purchase and place books in the shelves of the library. But in the children's section, there needs to be limits and restrictions to what our children are exposed to. Children are very impressionable, vulnerable, and trusting to suggestions and to influence of others. Parents want to safeguard and protect their children from subject matter that isn't age appropriate or that may be against their family values. Parents have the responsibility and right to decide when and how to bring up their child and such subjects, to bring up to their child such subject as sexuality and gender identity. The books that are concerning to so many of us weren't even requested by the residents of Crook County. They were purchased and placed throughout the children's section of the library by the librarian during the 2 years the library was closed due to COVID. Many of these books can't be read aloud in school board meetings because they're too graphic and too borderline pornography, child pornography. If these books must be in the library, there needs to be a separate section out of the children's reach labeled sexual and gender identity issues and LGBTQ issues, stating require parental permission to check out the books. I'm not against the parent stopping parents from checking them out and reading to their children in their home if they so want to, but don't expose other children to things that are values or against the family. These books must not be placed throughout the children's section for them to be exposed to the content of the books accidentally. Also, I implore the library to never stoop so low as to ever expose our children to drag queen story time or playtime. The library is no place for such degrading activities. Thank you very much.
Laura Jensen. I'm here. Okay. Very short.
I'm Laura Jensen. I am a Crook County resident. Regarding the books in the library. Who are you? Age 3+. I am Jazz. It feels good to be yourself and Girls Like Us for ages 4 through 8. I didn't check them out because they weren't here, but I did read the synopsis and some of them were a little disturbing. And so what I am asking that we all do is that we get a committee together and if you want to inform the parents, we need to see these books. We need to have a committee get together here or whatever and look at them and then have a consensus of what everybody feels. You are very strong feeling on it. Some of you on the here are very strong feeling on it. We need to be able to let you know how strong we feel about it. Not that we're trying to stop it, but not that we don't want to have peace with people, but we need to get together. Our country is not working together at all. Let's work together, look at these books, get these books together, and then find out what the legal term for pornography is. According to the legal term by Merriam-Webster dictionary is material that depicts erotic behavior or is intended to cause sexual excitement. We don't know about these books. Our imaginations are running wild. We need to be able to see them, get together and have it. We need to have public officials that know the law help us. And that's what I am suggesting we do as a group.
Dave Binder.
Dave Binder.
Okay.
Are you Dave Binder?
Yes, I am.
Speak.
I was interested in this meeting because of the should be age appropriate material available in this library for children and not something above their head that they shouldn't be seeing or being talked about. And specifically, that would be sexual oriented garbage. And I heard that there were some books available in here that are like that, and that kids can check them out. That's it.
Thank you.
Wait, just a moment, just a moment. We've got 5 more minutes. It's the time allotted for who's the next person.
Okay, Brett Bateman.
Yes.
Oh.
Hello. Yes. I would like to say that I really appreciate this type of format to just civilly discuss it. They're so rare to find that without yelling and screaming. I appreciate all the views. I have a bunch of personal opinions, but I just kind of want to focus on 2 main ones. The first one is the library is a government agency that my wife and my children have loved. I'm a Crook County resident. I've lived in Central Oregon for 20 years, and they come every week. We love the library, but it is government funded. And our taxes go to fund things like the library. And anything that has to do, and it doesn't matter which way you're arguing the point, that has to do with teaching things that you might consider morality or right and wrong, that should be out of anything regarding the government. Right. It doesn't matter which direction you're leaning. Who here says, I love all government and politicians? Nobody says that.
Nobody loves it.
I like firefighters and police officers.
Oh, that'd be one of them.
I like the government guys that keep the lights running, but we don't love politicians and we don't like the state deciding what material our children read. We like parents to decide what material our children read. And my wife sent me like 7 books that were horribly disturbing, but this one, when I looked at it, the hips on the drag queen go swish, swish, swish. So those of you that might not know the song, it's from The wheels on the bus go round and round. What age group do you sing that song to, with little kids? Babies, under kindergarten.
2, 3, 4.
I challenge anyone, and I'm not saying you should, to find a drag show that's not sexual. They're all sexual. You don't see wholesome drag queen shows. And some of them are not only sexual, but they're rampantly disgusting. Now, I love freedom. And if those adults want to do that, I mean it with all my heart. I would protect their rights to go have drag shows. But to put a book into a children's area that has to do with drag queens singing a song we sing to babies, that is wrong.
Amen.
That should never, ever even be considered. Thank you for your time.
Who's next? We got time for one more.
Ron Jackson.
I got time for a minute. It's my understanding that all these, I pretty much agree with everything this man said. Fact, 100%. All these books were picked up by the library staff during the COVID shutdown when everything was quiet.
That, I just need to push back on that and say that this is some misinformation that's been spreading
then
now for
straighten me out
several months. So my original conversation with Cheyenne about what happened during the pandemic is that when we did not have as much service to the public, we had a lot of time to work on our collections, which included going over all of the age groups, getting rid of old material and ordering new material in the natural selection process and the spending schedule that we have established. There was not a direct point of time where our librarians were specifically ordering books when we were closed. So this misinformation has been circulating now for 6 months. And I just need to say that that is not what happened. So
Well, I
I'm
would like
sorry.
to clarify, since it brought my name up.
This is the
We'll let
time.
Ron finish. I just had to
Yes.
say
Can we
that's not
restart
how
his
we
time?
spent. Yes, we can restart his time.
Okay. Oh, I didn't push the start button anyway.
Well,
There we go. It all worked
I
out.
wasn't trying to
There
put
you
out
go.
misinformation or disinformation, one way or the other, but it happened during that time period. Is that correct?
So this library has had books related to LGBTQ content for 20 years plus.
Okay.
Ordering these materials is part of our regular review process.
So I got a question for the library board. It's coming out of the statutes here. The library board shall be responsible for obligating and approving expenditures of funds appropriated by the library in accordance with the bill approved and contract approval policies of Crook County. The library board may delegate the authority to the library director. Has the library board done that? As the library board to April, you and your staff is go to do whatever you want to do.
That is her job.
Huh?
That is her job, and that is the teen librarian's job and the children's librarian job.
But we haven't
The-
voted
to
on that.
select.
It
If library
says in the
policy says
statute
we
that
vote on
the library board is responsible for it. They can assign or delegate that duty to the librarian, head librarian, which would be April. I'm just wondering if that was done.
Apparently, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
That should be in the minutes of the meeting somewhere.
It should be done every year.
Well, April, when did you come on? Because April's only been here 2 years.
November of 2020.
Yeah, so that we wouldn't be able to look back and see. I didn't vote on it, but I'm a new member. I'm not sure if any of the other members voted on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say for Jerry and Laquita, who have been on the board through various iterations of directors, has that been a practice that you were regularly doing with other directors, was granting them the authority to run the library?
I came when Buzzy was the director and we didn't do it then. My presumption, and I don't really know, is that when the library first got up and running, that was made as part of the bylaws. And those would have been approved by the board at that time. That could have been 20 or 30 years ago. I don't know, but it hasn't happened in the nearly 6 years that I've been on the board.
Why is it in your statutes if you don't follow it?
Well, I'm
Wait a
not
minute,
saying we
we're-
don't follow it.
We're not in the discussion. Now,
Yeah.
Mr. Jackson, you want to finish what you were, where you were going with that?
I'm finished.
If there's 1 minute, I would like to respond because April brought my name up. So what I found out in my investigation, because my daughter was one of the children who picked one of the books up that I was very appalled by, was that I went back and looked at library board policy and I met with April and she was great. And they had LGBTQ books, but to my knowledge, there had not been so many that were put in the children's section that were scattered throughout. So when I met with April, I found out that during the shutdown of COVID, they had a lot of time to order books. And they put over 200 books in the teen and children's library, if I'm correct, maybe 35 in the children's that were LGBTQ related that the public didn't know about. So I asked what the policy was to order those books, and she said they have to have a buyer request. So I said, could I please see the buyer request for any of those LGBTQ books, which mean that Crook County residents would have had to request that those books be bought and put in our library. They did not have one buyer request for those books because April and Jen decided, from your words, that Crook County was unrepresented in this area. And so they wanted the books to be put in there because they were what were being recommended by the publishers. So I would agree with Ron in saying that when the library was shut down, those books were put in there, and when it was opened back up, parents had no idea what was in the library. I did not, as a parent, have any clue that those books were in the library. And so
all the other topics of books in the library yet?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a teacher and I've been coming to the library every week for the last 20 years with my
Request
kids.
for all of the books that were ordered,
No,
or just
I pulled the request for the books that I felt had were pornographic to my 8-year-old daughter. So that's what was concerning to me, that my daughter picked a book up on masturbation when she's 8 years old. That bothered me that there was graphic pictures in there, and I had no clue that it was in there. So, yeah, so no, I didn't.
Selective is all I'm saying.
Yeah, it was selective because that's the book she chose. So I was curious of how many, I asked if they had sex books. I heard recently that they have a book in here called How to Unlive Yourself in the children's section. So I haven't approached that to come in and see if they have a book on children's suicide. I'm not sure. April, do you know?
I've
A
never
parent
heard
told
of
me
that
that
book.
there was a book in the children's section on how to unlive yourself.
I mean,
I'm
I can look
assuming
at
that
it
has to
now.
do with LGBT.
Okay, we're gonna have to cut off the
Okay.
talking. We've already
Can I
gone
just
to.
say one more second? I'm just surprised that anything that's that controversial ought to be approved by at least the board, and the public ought to have input into it before it just kind of sprung upon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Comment time is over. Oh, I forgot to ask if anybody on the phone had anything to say. Dang it.
So it was.
Sure. Well, we're running late now.
That's okay.
Seth just.
You ready for us?
Yeah, one thing, we gotta move down the agenda, but one fast thing, the consent agenda, which is the minutes of the October 12th meeting. Anybody read them and want to approve them? Need a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
All. Okay, now, Seth, you're on.
Great. Can we bring Aaron? I'm going to talk for a little bit, but I think the bulk of it is going to be Aaron Landau. He's a constitutional attorney that we hired to look at this. This isn't the first that I've heard of this. I've heard from a lot of people in our community about the situation here at the library. I think other people have really covered the content of books and titles and different things. I'm here more to talk about procedure and what we found out from this attorney, what the possibilities for the library to do. That is up to the library board to make that decision, which is another thing we found out, is that through state statute, the library board, as well as the library director, are the people that get to decide this. The county court does not get to decree what you guys are gonna do. So it's totally up to you guys' decision, what you guys wanna do. And the place the county court is coming from is we want the most people possible welcome in our library. And so that was the angle that we came from, because Natalie just sent me an email the other day talking about all the great things that are part of the library, and I agree with you 100%. And this gentleman too, your family uses it. I want to make sure that all the families in Crook counties can come here, use the library and feel comfortable and safe as well. What we found, and Aaron will expand on it, is what we can do legally is put these books in a separate section that are no less available than any other books. Again, this is the Constitution of the United States of America. This isn't us making this decision, but that they are able to be put in a separate section, just like Barnes and Noble if you go to Barnes and Noble, they have a cooking section and a history section and different sections that are equally as accessible for everyone. And what I've heard from Cheyenne, from different people I've seen here tonight, that's something that the people of Crook County would like to see, is that it's in a separate section. I know there's other people that would like to see it's behind lock and key, or that a teacher or a parent would have to go get it from the top. What I've heard from Aaron is that is not legally, we're not legally able to do that. That is a situation where that would put us in a position of ACLU lawsuit or some type of a thing that would end up costing taxpayer dollars and putting us outside the law, which nobody in here wants to break the law, do they? And so I think that's what we came from. The point of view is, how can we get the most people to feel comfortable at the library? And how can we do that without breaking the law? And so, Aaron, I'll let you, can we do a test on him? Can people hear him?
As soon as he says something.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Thanks, Seth, and thank you to the board for making time for us. I appreciate it. I know Seth does as well. Judge Crawford, I'm sorry. We have been on a first name basis. I will try to keep my comments brief and relatively narrow. My name is Aaron. I am an attorney working in Eugene for a law firm called Harang Long Gary Rudnick, and I do a lot of work for public entities, things like cities, counties, districts, and so forth, and a lot of work on constitutional law. And the question that I was asked by the county court was a pretty specific one, and that is whether there is a constitutional problem under the First Amendment with the library board or its director shelving books that concern what I'll just generally sort of on a blanket basis call LGBT subjects, separately from other children's books, still accessible to children, but simply placed together on a separate shelf. My conclusion is that there is not a constitutional problem with that. It is within the library board's authority to shelve books concerning a particular subject in one area and books concerning a particular different subject in another area, whether that's in a children's section or in a teen section or in the library's general sort of regular circulation areas. In general, organizing a library by subject is a perfectly lawful thing to do. Biographies here, history books there, art books over there. And that's no less true within a children's section than anywhere else in the library. I'm not aware of any authority that suggests that the First Amendment requires that particular subjects have to be intermingled. But at the same time, the First Amendment in most circumstances does prohibit the government, including the library, from favoring one particular viewpoint over another viewpoint. And so it's important to ensure that these kinds of organizational decisions don't have that effect. And at the end of the day, what it means is that the government can't limit access to particular materials by viewpoint. And from where I sit, there are two principles that I think are helpful in guiding that process as the community and the library board discuss it. One is that a separation of the sort that I'm talking about should not itself effectively favor or disfavor that separate subject. And so, for instance, while it may be perfectly fine to give a particular subject its own row or its own shelf, it would be problematic to tuck those books away on the bottom shelf of an unmarked back corner of the library that nobody ever visits. That would suggest an effort to limit access to a particular subject or viewpoint by making it hard to find, which risks running afoul of the First Amendment. The second sort of guiding principle is that in general, the broader the subject is, the less likely that you'll run into First Amendment problems. For instance, we would be unsurprised to see a separate section on American politics, right? But it would be problematic to see a library pull out and separate only those books that espouse one political party's views. By the same token, it would be fine to have the library have a religion section in general, but it might be concerning if instead of just having books on religion, they only pulled out those books that contained, say, Muslim themes or Christian themes, but not Jewish themes, or vice versa. As always, and this is true throughout First Amendment law, it's hard to find clear, bright lines. Rather, what we deal in is general principles. And the general principle here that guides these decisions is that the government may not favor or disfavor, or the key term here is limit access to a particular viewpoint. And so there's nothing about separating books by subject, whether that's within a children's section or teen section or general circulation section, that implicates First Amendment concerns, as long as the separation itself does not effectively limit access or favor a particular viewpoint. So that's what we have found. And I just, the last thing I'll say is the scope of what I have been asked to research and look at is just that question. And so there may be lots and lots of other questions about, well, what about this other approach? Would that be constitutional? What if they do this? You know, can the library do that? Those are all questions that we can look at individually. But what I've been asked to look at is solely whether this particular suggestion is one that falls within constitutional principles, and my conclusion is that it does.
And I don't think I'm asking for a decision tonight. I think that you guys are welcome to take this information and think about it amongst yourselves and have a conversation. If you do decide to move forward with finding separate sections for different books in the children's library, I can pledge that the court will continue, within reason, he's not cheap, but we'll continue to pay for Aaron's time for you guys to bounce things off and to make sure that you guys are following within the law, to make sure that we're not putting the county in a tough position. So,
May I ask a question?
Aaron, this is board member
Hi.
Jerry Bishop.
The guidance about not limiting access to certain topics, does that pertain when we're talking about restricting access to specific topics to minor children?
It is within the library board's legal authority to decide on what the library's circulation should be. I understand, as someone else spoke about earlier, that's something the library board can decide. That's on its own, or it can essentially delegate that to the library director. And so those kinds of, it is not that the library board has to keep a copy of everything or has to make everything accessible to every age. That's, just to be clear, not my conclusion, and I don't think any lawyer would tell you that. My conclusion is that the government can't step in and tell the library board what to do in a way that limits access to a particular viewpoint or topic. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
I have a question, and it's just about defining what is an LGBTQ book, especially in the context of a children's book. So my children are 2 and 5, so all of the books that we read are for that level. And we have one that's about a unicorn born into a family of narwhals, but later discovers other unicorns and that he's more like them, but he can still live with the narwhals as well. Like, is that LGBTQ? It certainly has LGBTQ themes, but it's a unicorn and a narwhal. Would that go in the special section?
Aaron, that was Natalie Good, a board member, asking the question.
Hi, Natalie. My response to that is that that's not really a question of law. That's a question of, what counts as a religious book, what counts as an art book. I don't think these are really legal questions. As I said, the library board gets to choose its circulation or its contents, and I certainly haven't been asked to make draw any kind of lines about what is or is not an LGBT topic. That's I think any topics, any subjects, you're asking what is a religious book, I think that's above my pay grade.
And since you're talking that question of that applies to censorship is who's going to decide and who's going to draw the line.
Right, and if there is a different
And is
section
that
and
the
something's
job?
outside of the section.
Right.
Like if a kid in the book is gay, but he doesn't have sex with anybody, is he still gay? What's a
Well,
gay
how
book?
do you order LGBTQ books? What do they come up under when you order them? And I
we've
guess
got
my question would be for pornography. What is legally defined as pornographic for a child? Like Natalie said, age 2 to, our children's section is from birth to 10 years old. So what would be like legally, what is pornographic? Because, if somebody babysat my kids and showed them a Playboy or something like that, I could turn that in probably to the police, I'm assuming. So what is considered pornographic would be more my concern.
With that would be the person showing it to the child, not the
Yeah, but if
document
the
itself.
child can go in and get the book without
But there's a
proper
big
knowledge.
Big
I'm
difference
just-
between Playboy, but Playboy is pornography, which is legal. Obscenity is illegal, and there's a 3-part Miller test to which you can put that
But
kind
what
of
is,
material.
so can you explain that for children? Like, can a 3-year-old, like, is it okay to
There's-
show a 3-year-old pornography? Is that legal? That's what my question is.
Your definition of pornography there's child pornography, which is clearly illegal, which has to do with children being included in certain acts and then the selling and the,
Yeah, but exposing
distribution of
children
it, but
to
you're
gay sex or heterosexual sex, is that legal for a child to go read like a sex book or a book that's dealing with sex acts? Is there any boundaries against that?
Well, yes, because we don't order books for the children's room.
there are materials like that.
Correct.
There are people
because-
having children having sexual intercourse
Right.
with each other in these
And
books.
pornography is
Well, what about
specifically
Lawn Boy?
like
If
to,
Lawn Boy shows to.
that's in the
to
adult
teenagers,
collection.
It's in
So-
the teen section.
Lawn Boy's in the adult collection. This is an example of what reviews for materials look like. Those are from our main vendors, and it shows you what the main review journals do, what the kind of language they use, and how they do their age recommendations.
And it
So
seems to me, it also fits into a larger grouping having to do with equity, inclusion, and diversity, and that the only difference among children, among human beings, isn't who they have sex with or who they love. There are all these others, there's a context with it. So then we're gonna go through and look in religion to see if there's any Wicca in there, or we're gonna go through any of these other categories. Who's the we that's gonna start doing that?
It sounds like the ask is 2-part. Decide if you want to separate books and then decide which books to separate.
Right, and
then
how are you
who-
gonna make that
Who
decision?
continues to police it and
Mhm.
redecide and reevaluate?
Right.
And what if we do it wrong? What if a gay book ends up on the wrong side? What's
Right.
the?
And what
what's
are
the
you
police?
telling young people, what are you telling children who are talking about having the library feel like a good, safe, accessible place to feel everyone welcome in the community? Well, that also includes who are portrayed in those books and who come to the library for that. And there's people who speak about, I don't come here anymore because of that. Well, there's other people who do come here because of that and have been marginalized their entire life. And you're talking about further marginalizing, not on the basis of whether it's French or Italian cooking. And I don't see, it's not a legal issue. It's a moral and social interpretation of that, whether or not you can actually It's not a constitutional issue here with that. It's a moral, social issue.
Yes,
And
Seth, I like your solution and I love
Yeah.
the really professional and legal approach to it. I
Yep.
think the idea, it feels simple and easy, but I really do feel like implementation of it would be
the challenge.
very challenging.
Yeah, no, that's up to you guys as a board.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's.
But I
I just don't
appreciate
want
you
to
bringing that
reject it.
forward.
All I'm doing is showing you, I've heard from the community, I've heard from both sides of the community. We thought this might be a really good solution to be able to take some pressure out of the situation. I've heard that this would be something that people in the community would appreciate, that if it wasn't a separate section, that would make them more comfortable. And so I wanted to make sure to just not come in and be like, we should do this.
It's definitely a perspective.
And give you the legal
Yeah.
knowledge that Aaron has and offer that as you move forward too, to help you do it in a situation where you're not putting yourselves in jeopardy.
Can I ask how most kids find books? Because when I bring my children to the library, we like to pick topics and I like to go through the catalog and like, okay, I'm gonna find you 3 books on platypus. We only found 2 that were in stock, but
Order.
more
500
platypus, more Oedipus, according to my 2-year-old. But you know, if they're looking for collections of books, it seems like a shelf full of LGBTQ books would just lend itself to for sure choosing one of those. I mean, I'm not sure what the process, like what most people when they bring their kids in, how do the kids find books? Is it random?
Yeah, I
Is it
mean,
like
to- at a
just-
certain extent, when kids can't read, they're completely reliant on their parents to do that work for them. So right now, you know, you walk into the kids' room, you've got picture books on one side, because that's like, okay, then you get kids the autonomy to kind of look for their own items because they can run through the picture books. You know, the other side, we start to get into chapter books and stuff like that, and it's different for that age. Then when we get into the kids who are reading independently, we do see them.
Excuse me, April. Would somebody tell the folks outside that?
They're working on this.
Okay,
My
thank
kids
you.
just go into the library and just go in.
Go.
Is it
I
kind
have
of,
time to go.
kind of
Okay,
like
wait.
a medium comparison?
Like
April's
pull
turn.
through
Yep.
or- yeah.
Is like watching television and picking television programs. Some parents get very involved and mediate what their children are exposed to on TV and go, there's a world of television out there, but I'm going to be active with you as we find these programs that are there. And in doing that, and some parents are like, good, I got something to do, here's the TV.
I would just
So
like to.
it's another
I'm sorry.
medium. It's another medium, right? Books, newspapers, magazines, television, yeah.
My focus as a library board member is what's best for the library.
Which is what's best for the community. I agree.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
the
hosting in
people
here
who
and having
fund
10
it.
seats still when there's 100 people out here who want to be able to hear and participate.
I
and have their
agree.
voices heard.
I would
This is
love-
so wrong.
I would love
This
to
is
move
wrong.
to the children's room.
We
I
should have
agree.
way more access to hearing your
Going to
guys's,
the
and we should be able to
library. I
articulate our voice to the community.
Hey, no.
There's no more comments allowed, so I wanted to voice up because I don't have an opportunity.
There
So
are
I'll
no more
be shunned out the
comments.
door like you guys intended it to
Okay,
be.
we are having a discussion
Come to the
here.
next meeting.
Huh?
Come to the next meeting.
Yes.
Fill out a comment card
Next,
early.
yeah,
When I hope that you guys do choose to pick a larger venue in the future so
Well,
that
we
more
were
people can
told though
attend.
this next meeting would be in the Brighton room.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't speak to that. I just think
it's
that,
already booked. I mean, it's
it's-
always booked up.
well, then I will help you find another location that's a larger location, because I know that at our county court meetings, we have a lot, and your planning commission meetings, which are
Yes.
very similar, there's allowed numerous people to come and hear the conversation. There's still limits to questions. Hold on. There's still limits to questions and comments and different things, but the people are all welcome in the same room to listen. And I think it's incumbent on the public body to be as transparent as possible.
Absolutely,
and
I
have that
agree with
conversation.
that. But every meeting of this board is to do business. And when we have this situation constantly, we're not doing business. We've got stuff here that from September that we're trying to
Sure.
finish.
Laquita, part of the problem is the community was shut out in
They have
making
never been
decisions
shut out.
about the library. They are being shut out. There's been several meetings in which the public has not been allowed to participate
That
or
is not true.
it's being done right now.
That is,
And so there's, and the community, this is our library. We pay taxes here.
But there's a
So,
15-minute comment.
I
period in the
understand, but that
library
just
business.
started last time because Laquita got agitated at the board meeting about
one of the women who came to speak, and she didn't want to discuss this topic anymore. So she said that she wanted to put limits on it. It's dead and over in the water. But we've already
Because we have
discussed
other
it.
business to do.
I understand that, but this is an important topic in our community. We have tons of young moms. We now have an entire school. As a teacher, that bothers me. An entire school cannot come to this library because of this issue. So you're shutting out over 300 kids that cannot come to this library because of this.
We are
This
not
is
shutting them
a-
out.
this
That
is
is
a
also
problem.
not
We're not
correct.
shutting them out.
No. They can
That was
come.
not our decision.
Well, parents are concerned, and when you shut parents out from being able to speak, there's a problem. And for the chair to decide that she doesn't want to hear comments, that's a problem. I see that as a problem on the library.
Cheyenne, I'm not going to debate that point with you. The comment I made at the last meeting is the lady brought up the same stuff that you brought up that we had already discussed, and you were here when we discussed it.
But she didn't know because now all these parents
Right.
are coming into the library.
Because
So-
she'd only had her library card for 4 days, and
How many of these people actually use the library? Oh, you have cards?
Oh,
Yes.
yay, good.
But I don't know
Okay,
if they'll
good.
use it after this.
Okay.
By the way.
That was very
condescending.
I don't think it is.
Why are you just asking?
No, it's your turn.
Would it be possible maybe to consider just holding a meeting specifically for this one topic that would be separate from the board meeting, so you guys can still have time to work through your business, and then even putting some limitations both on the amount of time the meeting takes and then how long people get the floor as well, and maybe even submitting topic ideas beforehand to make sure that we're not just yelling at each other or just getting into a debate where it'd be an opportunity maybe just to voice a concern or an opinion. Nobody gets to challenge it in the moment, and then everybody feels like they're getting their chance without taking time away from the library's board standing meeting.
So if we need to schedule a formal public hearing, we can look into doing that for sure.
Something like that. I think that might make people happy.
Bring
Yeah.
some of the books that we can then look at.
Yep.
You know, I mean.
I think the
they're
issue
not
that we've run
here.
into this is that we have always used this room. I know there was some comment in the hallway about how that doesn't seem right, but this has been the board meeting space. We never know what public turnout is going to be. Historically, it has been very
Zero.
small. We are not looking to quell anybody or shut anybody down. The Broughton Room was booked with 2 very significant predated events for this evening, so that's why we are not in there. If this item about, so we've already just realized constitutionally, like, we're not here to remove books. So the books that are in the collection follow our collection development policy, which is one thing that we've been talking about a lot. So if there needs to be a public forum on how those books are organized or where those books go or what are these books, you know, we can look at that as well. I guess my question of that would be, we have the opportunity to share that feedback and to hear from the community. That's great. Is it the public forum aspect of that feels important? Because my office is always open and I don't have people visiting me to share their concerns. So that's part of as a library director, I am here to hear what the community has to say. The public forum takes a particular tone and angle that I'm not sure is productive to this conversation. So as a department head, that's
When
my
you say the public
concern.
opinion isn't productive,
Well,
state
are we, wait,
taxed entity, that's a problem. That's what she just said.
I think your comment.
What's the difference?
It's talking about things in this sort of way instead of having it productive.
What issue does the library have that's more pressing than this issue out here? I'm sincere. Is there
excuse me, the
something
chair recognizes Deborah.
Yes, my question is everyone, not that people's views shouldn't be heard and there's time and a place for that. As a new board member, what is the role of the board? What is the scope of which the board exists? What is the function of the board to do? And is all of this, so the role of the board, advisory role to the director with certain numbers of things to be done, is part of that job then to also facilitate the community discussions, weigh in on the choice. I think getting back to what is the mission of the board, what is the function of the board, what is within the purview of that, and what things are beyond the scope of the board.
So April
That-
works for the board,
Right.
right?
I
And then I think
understand
the
that.
problem that the public has is that these books were brought in, the board policy says that you have to represent your community. These books were brought in without community input or the
So the
community asking for
community
them to be in
weighs in
here.
and votes on every book the library.
No, they
adopts.
don't, but the policy of the board policy, if you want to read your book.
I have read
states
my book, and
That
that's what I
the
want to.
board has to represent the community in which it lives in. And so
Yeah.
nobody asked for 300 LGBTQ books to be brought in during the COVID shutdown.
That number is
The community,
incorrect.
can you provide then, April, can
Okay.
you please
Yes, I
provide
can.
all the books that came in between 2020 and 2022 related to LGBTQ, transgender, masturbation and things like that in the children's library? They were brought in between 2020 and 2022. And the public had no input. This is our library. We pay for it. We pay taxes. You don't live here and the other librarian doesn't live
And so
here.
do people.
So
who
how do
those
you
books
represent the community?
Cheyenne? Is that, and is the board to be representative of the community in terms of the makeup of the board? Or are you saying that we need, as board members, to be community advocates for our own personal positions?
No, the community, the board, the role of the board is to be diverse, which I have brought up at the last 3 meetings, that we do not have a diverse board. And I was laughed at when I asked if they had reached out to the Hispanic community, because I feel like we do not
I
have a
think we're getting
diverse
off
board.
topic.
Yeah,
here.
we are.
What I
get
wanted
back
to do is, what is the mission of the board? What are we, so there's a lot of business the board isn't getting to because of this other. What is
Don't
the,
use Robert's rules of order and respect each other. You guys are talking all over each other, and as soon as somebody gets an answer that they don't like, starting to talk, you guys hammer the gavel or talk
Well,
over each other.
we
It's really
also tried to
disrespectful.
do it with having the way, and other boards I've been on, there's 15 minutes for the community to submit questions and comments in advance, time limit, and then the board moves on to other business. And here we are, an hour.
Yep, exactly.
I think your priorities are kind of misguided, though. You know,
Well,
you are
no,
more
then
con-
let's
you're
get back
more
to what's our
concerned
job
about time than
description.
you are about being responsible to the community.
But there's
And that
multiple
is the
things on
whole
agenda.
issue there.
So I
This isn't
Are
our
you
I
being
think we're
responsible?
getting off topic.
Yes. Thank you
And
for
so
this.
I think Aaron and I have laid out what we found out. I know that I talked to Aaron beforehand and he did have to feed his children and I to feed my children also tonight. And so if there's any other questions for Aaron, I would love to see them. And I would love for you guys to think about what we've told you guys about your ability, what your abilities are to do within the law.
Was very clear, his
And,
presentation.
again, I'm happy to have Aaron be able to give you guys more information. And I think he can give you, I'll talk to Aaron and double check on this, but I think he can give you a pretty good idea of what your role is in the community, but in the library. But my understanding is it does have a lot to do with what is going on at the library. You guys are kind of the buck stops here
Yes.
on what you guys want to do with the library and different things. But that being said, I think it's extremely important that you take public comment and are transparent, just like we do at the county court, you do at the planning commission, and the city council does, and all other governing bodies. And I think it's really important that you guys have meetings, again, it's your choice, but you have meetings in an area that you can house the entire people. And that's fine. That it was a surprise that we had so many people here, but in the future, I think it's clear that people are coming back and they're going to want to have a conversation. I really like her idea of having a specific meeting if you're concerned about not getting your, again, totally up to you. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but have a separate meeting where you can hear from these people, bring the books, look at the books, share those books with people, have that conversation. And maybe that will change your mind. Maybe your mind's the same, but at least you're taking in that public input and that transparency, because I think that's how government works the best. So that's kind of the end of my soapbox. So.
Seth, are they subjecting themselves to a lawsuit if they're unwilling to move the books to their own section?
Yeah, we asked about that also. So anybody?
Does Aaron have any parting words he would like to share?
I would just say thanks for having me.
Thank you, Erin, for
And
being
since
here.
this is recorded, what Aaron said, right, we can have a transcript literally of that
100%. Yeah.
as far as to review some of those really important points in
Yeah. And again, please don't abuse him because he's not cheap. But feel free to call him and follow up on things and I'm just joking. Use him however you need to.
there. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks
Thank you,
for
everybody.
Thanks, Judge. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you for your efforts in a challenging situation, no matter which way you swing.
Thank
it's
you.
challenging.
Thank you for being
All
here.
all we want is to see the books, because I came in today to look at these books and they're not here. You know, so we just need to see it with our own eyes. We don't want to be surprised when our kids might see it.
Okay, folks, we're moving on. We've done the consent agenda. We've done that. We're now on continuing business, which we had scheduled for 6:10 and it's now 6:15. So that wasn't too
Not too
bad,
bad.
was it?
Not
Of course,
too
we
bad.
skipped the reports, but where are we? Draft library board trustee application.
And this is what you circulated, right?
What?
This is what you
Yeah, this
circulated.
is all the stuff that was kind of in some of the emails that we had gone through.
Okay, 6A. Also, there is a job description in here that goes with the application.
Yeah, so that's after. So right now with the continuing business, it's just to kind of finalize what our application looks like
Right, I'm
based
finding it.
on.
People's.
So based on the work that the court has done to kind of put consistent practices on committees and boards, in the packet, there was a copy of Court Order 2252, which establishes the policy and procedure for what all county boards and committees will be doing going forward to either fill midterm vacancies or just the regular appointment process. So I put the order in your packet so you could see where the court landed. And then I did put together just a draft of what our application could look like, using some of the questions that you all reviewed. Yep.
Have a glorious evening.
Have some
I
pizza.
appreciate you all.
Stay
Take care.
Okay, this is the application that we did the questions on by email.
Yeah. So everybody took the survey, which was awesome. Thank you guys so much for working really hard on this through email and kind of extending your time commitment. So we had the application questions that had a majority vote, which would be for us 3+, interview questions, a separate process. So we're not talking about the interview necessarily right now. We just need to get an application set so that I can give it to admin so that they can then put it up on the master website where all of the application for court for different committees will go. So there were, I would say, a pretty decent amount of kind of thematic overlap on the questions that got the majority vote. So I looked at them and just from my own perspective, kind of considered what can we ask that captures the essence of these questions without being redundant? And I also didn't think we needed to have like a 12 question application. So this is 5 questions along with just general contact information, as well as a couple of suggestions that came out about how long have you lived in Crook County? Do you have a library card? I just put that in under kind of general application. So the questions that I posted as the draft are, why are you interested in serving as a library trustee? Describe past positions or experiences that would assist you as a board member. In your opinion, what is the most important role of a library board member? Have you read the full position description of a library trustee? Do you have any questions about the expectations? And then the last question is just basically about, can you attend meetings regularly as well as attending library events to be kind of the face of the library? And then any additional comments can be added. And then the last part is just a signature and date.
Really clean.
Yeah, and then Amy, so admin does have the software for DocuSign. So I will give this, if this is what we decided on, I would give this to Amy and she would create it in DocuSign software. So the format may look a little bit different, but essentially if this is what feels good to us, this is what would stand as the library Board of Trustees application that would be on that master page.
Would you like a motion on that?
Well, we can talk about it first and see if people felt like
I
it
think
was
we talked about it
good.
by email, didn't
Went
we?
around by email and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody comments?
Can I look at it one more time?
Yep.
I don't have it hard.
Oh,
And it has the date, correct?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And then Amy says that she will also be, if anything, so now with DocuSign, things are turned in electronically and get an automatic timestamp. If she does create paper applications for somebody, or if somebody came here, there's the date line on the back. So there's a couple of ways in which this will be verified as far as date and time of submission.
I think it looks good.
Okay, yeah, I felt like it was pretty straightforward based on some of the other applications that we had reviewed. Felt pretty boilerplate for the most part, so.
If it's needed, I would move that we approve the document.
I second it.
Awesome.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, awesome. I will get this to Amy next week, and she's still in the process of building up that site, but it will be really excellent to have everybody in the county kind of working under the same way. Eric in legal counsel and Amy worked really hard on the order, which I think is incredibly helpful. It gives process and policy in a place where there wasn't any, and now whether it's Fair Board, planning, natural resources, library, we'll all be working the same way. So that feels good.
So the court order basically is what tells us the procedure we're going to use.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do anything with that other than
Correct.
follow it.
Yeah, yeah. And so then when we move into new business, you'll find that in the bylaws and the position description, now we're able to reference the court order, which just brings everything together. So those are the next two things that we've got up.
The Board of Trustees bylaws was clear back from September.
Yeah, I had been wanting to update these just as general policy, and then the news about court making consistent practices came up. So it was like, okay, we'll kind of wait and see where all of that comes out. So really, I didn't make or suggest, excuse me, any significant changes other than noting where the order kind of impacts the membership, where it impacts vacancies. Since a vacancy is a little bit different than like there's a midterm vacancy versus a regular cycle opening. So I did just in C note if a midterm vacancy occurs, that's what we're really looking at in part C of the bylaws. And then the only other addition was just when these get republished, the full text of that court order will be included in its completion as an appendix to the bylaws, so that it's all one thing. So those were the suggestions I had for bylaws. I didn't know if any other board members had thoughts on things that needed editing or changing. Again, this has pretty much served as boilerplate for the library board for a long time. So just those little additions to make for the new application process.
Any discussion?
I think it's really good.
Excuse me?
It's good.
Okay. Would we have a
Yeah,
motion?
we need, yep.
Motion to approve bylaws.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Now, but the job description that I had, or I thought when I left the house, I do not have.
I know that's, I stapled mine together. So I'm like, where is that? No, I didn't staple it together. I brought it. I've got so many papers. Essentially with the position description, the only additions were just noting there's a section for references at the top, and it just now adds the reference of the court procedure. And then I did add one line under expectations of the position, which is to be aware of government and library ethics, including those published by, thank you.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, so with the job description, it was interprets and advocates for the library's role was one update. And then if you move down on Deb's screen,
just touch the screen and
pull it up.
Which up that way?
Yeah, and then the other under
Yeah.
trustee qualifications is understanding of government and library ethics, including guiding principles from the American Library Association. So those were the only things that I added to the position description. Otherwise, everything stood. So again, if there are other ads or if those didn't feel good, we can talk about that.
Does anyone else want to?
Let me see it. Yeah, I had it. It's stuck to something else. So anybody have any feelings about it?
And the responsibilities and duties really get to the point I was trying to make a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Is, okay, what's within the purview? What's a responsibility? And then what might be beyond that?
Yeah,
That might-
and we, we can, one thing that I would like to chat with Aaron about, as well as our own legal counsel, is what's the difference between a governing board and advisory board?
Yes.
Because since we aren't a special district library, this does exist as an advisory board versus governing. So there are some differences in what the board does,
Right.
in those two organizations.
What the
so.
capacity is and what the limitations are.
Right,
And
right.
That's partly why I brought it up, since,
Yeah.
new to this and our discussion about this being a different model.
Yeah.
As being a department, so.
Yeah, well, and the conversation points about, giving the responsibility to the director. From my understanding of being in the library world for 20 years, that's not a motion that gets made on the regular
No.
basis. That's essentially, even in a governing board, the governing board sets the high level policies and then the library staff enacts the policies and does the day-to-day.
Exactly.
With a advisory board, I hate to say it, but there's even a little less teeth to the direction from the board. Like, it is there to set policy. That's why all of our policies are board approved. So it's that top level of recommendation for how the library works, and then relying on the professional opinions and the training and everything like that of the library staff to actually run a library.
Motion to approve job description.
Second.
Motion carries.
Wait.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say with Sean out. Let's see.
Okay,
That was a move from
Natalie and
Yeah.
a second by Deborah. All those in favor?
Now I say motion carries. Or you say motion.
Motion
carries. Somebody say it.
Somebody say motion carried. Okay, now, we got to the end of the agenda. It is 6:30 and
April has to drive home in the dark.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
okay. I
No,
told
what I
everybody
was-
knows that I'm gonna be late on this
what I
one.
was gonna say, does anybody, we can back up if you wish. Any questions about any of the reports? So. I know
Oh, the
you-
ones that we.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the ones
the
that we
ones we
skipped over.
skipped.
Fund circulation.
Yeah,
Service.
looked like circulation's way up again.
Yeah, we had, as far as statistics go, the financial report wasn't ready yet, so I'll email that out to everybody when it comes. It'll probably be on Monday. But finance did do a quarterly review. Everything looks fine. There is a situation where when the budget was approved, somehow the library staffing model got misfigured. And we are currently looking at a budget shortfall because somebody somewhere didn't count our staff properly.
Oh, shoot, because you said you had just gotten back up to
Yes,
level, right? where you
yeah.
want to be, and now someone's
So,
going, "Uh-oh."
there it is.
yeah, so
Job
the
description.
finance team was like, wait, this isn't adding up, and it's because somebody discounted a couple of our staff members despite
shoot.
me reporting like this is our full staff and this is what our FTE is.
Right?
I don't know when and where, but it's not where we landed,
So who do you submit the report to?
to the finance department.
And so who's on the finance department? So within the library or is it?
No, it's with the county, yeah. Yeah, and so the budget was also done last year with the help of a consultant. So there were a few irregularities to how the process went because they were working with somebody different. So I don't know what changed from my staffing report and my presentation on staffing to then what was actually finalized. I don't know how that happened, and neither does finance.
I think a couple of other departments had
It
some
happened to, I think
problems.
it happened to health. And I mean, sheriff's department is just like always understaffed, so that probably just makes sense for John, but yeah, I think it was us and something funky happened with the staff count at the health department as well.
Oh, shoot.
So that was the only thing financially that came up with the first quarter review, is that there does seem to be a budget shortfall because we weren't counted properly. At this point, the library does have contingency funds in our budget to cover that gap. We also are seeing things like I don't know, this is not, I'm not the tax assessor, but it sounds like there's an 8% increase on property tax coming in, which is significant. To see that percentage, usually you're looking at maybe like 2 to 3%. And this year it's an 8% growth. So when our property tax allotment comes in, that will help buoy us a little bit. And then we also do maintain a solid contingency fund that can be utilized as needed. But right now, the finance analyst, the budget analysts are trying to figure out where this mistake happened.
So is it like $100,000?
Like 15.
15,000.
Yeah.
15,000 or 1,500?
Thousand,
15,000,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. I mean, one of the nice things is that we did have a couple unfilled positions at the very beginning of the fiscal year that would kind of weigh into that, but it's one of our, like, kind of the lowest paid positions, so. Yeah, so anyway, I'll send out October's financials next week. And yeah, statistics were all pretty straightforward. Again, Natalie, we did find the spreadsheet error because Shauna's a spreadsheet genius. And so now our shelf check ratio is all organized properly. Thank you. Not being the spreadsheet genius, when the fiscal year flipped, I missed a couple formulas. So that was all set. I think we were still seeing that 100 new cards per month trend continue this
Yay,
month. So
that's
that's great. Yeah, and if anybody had any other questions about the reports, we are here to answer your questions.
Yeah, I didn't look at them. I've been in Florida. It's nice and warm. So
You missed the hurricane.
by like, yeah. Well, we bought our tickets, non-refundable, everything was non-refundable. And then the first hurricane hit 2 days after we bought them and we thought, oh my word. So then we went and then we got home and 3 days another hurricane. I thought, oh my word. Yeah.
I would appreciate a top of the cuff board consult on your thoughts regarding a public hearing.
Well, I was looking at the agenda, and the last agenda item is agenda for the next board.
Yes.
And I must say, my belief is that if we don't come to a resolution of this, and I'm not saying it's going to be final, but if we don't find a way to deal with this, this is our destiny.
Right.
Yes.
And it will continue until activity in the library drops significantly, I think, from the community. So we need to find a way to deal with this that will be acceptable to the community.
So I did have a chance to meet, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, and what would be a way that people can feel heard, that it could be organized, right? Town hall style or however, some kind of thing like that, in a super organized, so it doesn't end up like a bunch of shouting and a
Yes.
bunch of other kind of like some ground rules or other things, so that people feel really, really heard.
I think tonight it could have gone very well if we would have been a little bit more flexible, because we had the opportunity to go into the children's room or into the library itself. And you could have taken everybody's comments cards and it could have been very easy, but the way that it turned out, it looks like people got shut out and people were irritated.
Well,
People
we
can't
have new
hear.
procedure too, right, that people weren't used to, is saying there's
Yeah.
15 minutes for this, so they
But
can
we
come back
could
next
have-
meeting.
We could have, look, we had just said we have stuff from September. We could have just taken away all public comment from the November's or from December's meeting and just listen to the community because they showed up.
So,
And so it could have gone a lot better, and now you're gonna have very, very angry community members.
So
So-
then, to back to April's question, what's the best next step?
so one next step is to have a special meeting just for that. I think the danger of that, and you kind of alluded to that, April, is we don't want to set ourselves up for an ambush. Some place where there's just out of control discussion, because I think we all know what the issue is. People are unhappy with this particular part of the collection. And we can't meet without it being a public meeting. So how can we best make sure people feel heard and come up with a solution so that people think we're not just listening, we're acting?
Can we get the big room for next time?
So there's people are very organized in their reservations. We allow those to book out for non-library groups 3 months in advance. Do you want to pull up the schedule right now and see what it looks like? And there is a community organization that uses that room every second Thursday.
So Seth volunteered to help us find.
Yeah, I mean, we can
A
meet
place.
at the admin, or there's the annex building on Third where they also have had meetings. That room is pretty small.
Office from the city.
The annex to
The-
the county buildings where juvenile
The one on the
is.
corner.
What about Carrie Foster? They have a lot of big things.
Yeah, there would be the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
The
Our
admin-
building's great because they have all your text
Go
on
to the
there.
website.
The
And
admin-
another approach is for the next meeting to have a proposal. And something like, I know what would occur to me because you and I have spoken. And
Yeah.
my focus is on the library. I want what happens to be in the library's best interests. And the best interests of the library are not served by annoying the entire, 3/4 of the population of Crook County. So I'm thinking about a proposal that would show people that we're listening, that would move the collection to some place like the teen room or.
But those books are not
Well,
rated for teens.
Right, okay.
You're trying to
I'm-
make it sound like they have
I'm-
to stay in the children's room.
I don't care where they go. I would like to be able to say to people, we're gonna try something. Let's see if that meets the needs of the community or not.
Don't we need
I-
to discuss that though, those specifics as a board?
Well, I'm wondering if April, you and the teen librarian and other people who are more knowledgeable than we are about the library and the collections and where things are cited and where people go, could come up with something focused like that, something a little bit beyond, they are where they are and they stay where they stay and we don't care what you think. Because that's not working. And if we don't come up with something more, this isn't gonna end.
Could it be like a sticker on the book saying contains LGBTQ content?
Yeah, so this is,
I mean, I still
I
don't know
met
how to
with
define the books.
Aaron, I met with Aaron and all three commissioners in executive session, Monday, last week sometime, to discuss this. So what Aaron presented is like straight on constitutional. You can make a special collection as long as you're not prohibiting access. So what I then said to him was, the issue for me as a library professional is the motive. Because then when you get into the guiding policies and procedures of this profession, doing anything that is, we had somebody talk about like a warning label, doing anything that approaches this material from a disfavorable position invites the restriction. So labeling is not supported by the American Library Association unless you're like, I'm gonna label these books and put them on a big gay display,
Yeah.
because that's not prohibiting
Because words that
access.
would very much make the community upset.
Right, and
Or
so
to show
that's
people
the
who haven't
thing,
been a part of
if
the
we, and if you think about the way the children's room is set up, it is packed to the gills right now. If we were to make a special collection, the easiest space for that to be would be up in the front by the new books, because we have some media that needs to be dealt with that isn't circulating. So right now, for example, our kids' audiobook collection is in the front. We can move the audiobooks to be with the other AV in the back of the room. All of our AV is together. There's not space anywhere else to put all the AV together. And then we have a nice little range that we could put this collection.
How many
The-
books are there?
Okay, so that's the other question. So like Natalie said, what makes an LGBTQ book and who defines that? And
Like
that's
Bert and Ernie
why
would be,
libraries
right?
don't do
Like all
this.
Sesame
Could we start with
But
common sense?
Can we start?
You know, I
So
mean,
if you
I'm
start
I'm
with
not saying that
guidance,
you're not
I don't
being.
know.
No,
I
because
don't
one
know if
person's
there's-
common sense is
Yeah.
not another.
But
but-
how about the books we ordered from 2020 on? Like,
So-
how about the ones that like the This Is Jazz and?
Yeah, so it would be anything that's in our library catalog with the subject heading LGBTQ. So that's 35 materials from the kids' room. It would be like one shelf. So when I was talking with the attorney and the court, what I said was, this then sets up the library for other problems because people don't want a display of LGBTQ materials. So then I'm concerned about vandalism, theft, fiscal irresponsibility of having to replace these materials over and over, because even with them interfiled, we're experiencing theft and loss of these books. And now, given that it's coming from a motive and a perspective of these books are not what I want to see, to avoid what the attorney says is unconstitutional, I can't stick them in the back corner. I can't put them someplace. And the children's room is designed for access by children and their families. So, you know, there's a lot of what Aaron in our meeting called practical concerns that overlay the baseline constitutional or not issue that he's presenting. So, you know, I'm happy to get the team together and think about this. We've just today, we were kind of looking around the space and being like, where would this go? What would we have to reorganize? Talking with Aaron in the court, it's like, we have best practices in cataloging and like nonfiction books versus fiction books. There's a lot of different things going on that make this not as simple as I'm just going to take these 35 books with the LGBTQ subject heading and put them here. Because then we had a patron who was unhappy with a Hallmark Christmas film that we had that was in the DVD collection, no cataloging marked that as an LGBTQ item, but it had a gay character. So they were like, you have a movie with a gay character in it and I don't like it. But there's nothing that would have informed us by the standards of the library, you know, that this has a gay character. So that's the other thing with some other children's books. You can have a queer character in a book, but the content isn't significant enough to earn it that subject heading. So that's where it kind of gets bogged down. Well, then what about gay authors? You know, authors who may be known to be gay and then are writing materials, and then, you know, what does that look like? So
Yeah, I don't think we need to start with everything. I think in my view, as a board member who cares about the library, even though I'm probably the only person who doesn't have a card, we don't need to do everything, but if we can start at someplace, I just hate the thought that the response to the community has to be nothing we can do.
I just was thinking about different approaches. Like if we don't want to move the books or highlight the books or subject the books to vandalism, what if there could be some sort of different layer of parental oversight? So anytime a book that's checked out that's rated for kids under a certain age, maybe 10, what if an email is sent to the parent account saying, here's a synopsis of the books you checked out today?
The problem with that is.
Could that be automated?
it's so problematic.
Oh, it is on a privacy issue.
It's so problematic, and we are determined to uphold privacy. So if so the thing of children library cards is a parent has to sign off on it, which means a parent is setting the PIN number, has the library card number, and is able to access their child's account anyway. So that's how that system is set up to provide that parental oversight, is your kid just can't come in and get a card. And this is really what the bigger issue was Steen's Pillar, was the fact that there weren't parents on those visits. Not that the teachers didn't like it, not that the principal didn't support it, but because we didn't have the opportunity for that parental oversight on those trips. So
you're saying
there
that's
also
already
is,
there. The account's already there where they can already see all that information.
correct. It's kind of like how the school district works, and you can sign into your
What if we
kid's
just
account.
highlighted that? And correct. You know, you can look up and get a synopsis of your books every single time your kid goes. Here's how. And what if we did like community programs? Look at what your kids are reading based on the resources we already have.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
I think too, a lot of the problems, like the problem I ran into is that my daughter came here. And like when my kids come in, I just let them go to the library. Like I just go find, you get 5 books, go throughout the whole library, find what you want, read them. You know, I would do homework with a child while another child was getting books. I never had any issues. And so a lot of parents, I think a lot of parents do that. And I mean, I've used library so I would just bring my kids to play like on a rainy day. Like you guys there's so much here that we weren't even necessarily checking the books out. We would just read the books in the library. And I think that is the issue, is that parents don't want their children just grabbing some of those books that was some of the graphic material.
Well, because then I know that some of the concern is about a whole different variety of materials. So that there's the LGBTQ plus materials that are of concern. And then there's also the health and human development books that are of concern. So in the children's room, we do collect books on puberty that are appropriate for up to age 10 or 11, which is kind of like the upward extent of our children's collection. So if you're starting to think about a 10, 11-year-old child, you're moving 5th, 6th grade. So we are looking at books on puberty and human development that are, and Jen is like, I am so careful with these books. She's like, I don't buy puberty books that are rated for ages higher than 11 to go into the children's room. So there's another collection that has significant concern. The thing about that is that those are nonfiction titles that are already naturally kind of grouped together. LGBTQ plus materials in the nonfiction collection are also already kind of grouped together in a couple of different places. So this special collection then would essentially pull the books from the nonfiction collection that are already naturally grouped together. It would then bring in the books from the fiction collection, because fiction is just organized by author. So then it would bring in, and it's probably like, if we've got 35 books with that subject heading, probably half a dozen of them are nonfiction and the rest are fiction. So yeah, then those would just be all together.
I'd hate to see perfection keep us from making reasonable progress.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I get that for sure. We have to set, so any special collection that's in the library right now especially has parameters set. So in the collection development policy, for example, there's a whole section on Ochiko, our local history collection, because that is dealt with differently. So now that I'm not trying to bog this down in process, but unfortunately there is a bureaucracy around this of like, if we're making new policy for a special collection, it has to be codified. We have to know what's going to land there. Our selectors need to know what the parameters are so that when they're ordering, they can keep that in mind.
But aren't they under LGBTQ titles, like when you went to order? Because when I came in and I asked for Kim to pull up, I said, what are all the LGBTQ books you have? She went under and she found me every single book, like she printed it out quick.
Yep.
And
that's
so,
that
but I
35.
mean, it's just using common sense. Like, let's just use common sense. Like, let's just go back to 2020 and say, hey, these are the new books we brought in. We're gonna put them somewhere.
Well, some of them are older than 2020 because we have been ordering these books for a long time.
Did you put an LGBTQ display up for Pride Month for June?
Nope.
Did they have any? Because I saw something come across my Facebook with the Pride, same Pride for the library. I screenshotted on my phone.
I would be happy to take a look at that.
Pride, same Pride for the library. I screenshotted on my phone. So I was just wondering if you did any special displays.
We didn't.
For that. No.
Can you imagine coming up with a proposal by for
Yes.
the next meeting?
What if we came up with 3 proposals and then had a public forum to say, come up and talk about or advocate for the right option?
Yeah, I
and
mean,
we'll
my
decide after.
concern is my perspective with the practicality and the work behind libraries with Aaron's perspective on constitutionality is people still aren't going to like it. Because
No.
we're going to have a
They're
Pride display
not
all
going
year
to-
long.
They're not going, they may not like it or accept it as with finality. But I think it seems to me that where we need to start is in showing people that we're taking this seriously and trying to meet them halfway. Because the answer I don't want to give those people is nothing we can do.
A public forum where people just continue to talk about getting
No,
rid of
that's-
books.
Yeah.
And
That's
talk about
useless.
things that we can't do.
Or going book by
That's-
book.
That's a public
and-
forum I
No.
don't necessarily want to sit in.
No, I
I'd rather
agree.
sit in a public forum that says, here are the 2 things we can do. Please advocate for one of them and try to talk within these parameters.
And this is why I was getting back to what's within the board's duties and responsibilities and being clear about what is and what is perhaps being asked that's beyond that, that's not a part of that, not trying to go, this isn't my job, but some of that kind of evaluation of titles and some of these other things that we trust people who are experts to know. But what's, and it is, kind of, it's on that list of responsibilities. And so part of that is for people to know what is and what is not part of the purview of the library board.
Well,
And,
if not us, who?
and that's part of,
And
that's part of it. And
I
informing
hate
is
to
saying,
see it dumped on, I'm sorry, I'm doing a male thing, I guess. I've been one all my life. It's hard not to. But doctors typically interrupt in 8 seconds, don't we? I don't want to see all of this dumped on April and her staff either.
No.
Because once the people in the community who are unhappy with this lose the sense that there's any value in coming to the board and trying to be heard, they're going to find another way. Whether it's crowding the lobby or the, the whatever. This, I don't see this going away unless we come up with a proposal.
I think my proposals would probably.
Hey Kathy, just wanted you to know.
To the side. I need that to be on the record that this is not what libraries do, but for this community, for this situation, if this is the only way forward, then I understand. And so we can look at those two options, which really are the ones that would fit constitutionally. We can label to create a visual cue, or we can make the shelf to cover the subject area. And then if the public is like, well, I don't want to see these books.
Different scenario.
Right. If it's more important to not see the books, then it's probably easier to have the visual cue interfiled. We're like, oh, that book has a rainbow sticker next.
Yeah.
I'm not sure,
I know.
and so I guess that maybe would be the point of the public forum is which would help us all move forward. Is
I
it?
know.
Which one violates the library policy, Mark? Because you seemed really against labeling.
Yes.
At the very beginning, you were super concerned.
I
with
am.
labeling.
Yeah. So the thing that it all comes down to is the motive behind this. And then that's what I brought to Aaron in court was the motive here is unfavorable towards the content. It's not the queer community coming to us and saying, we need to have a section of books that are easy for us to access so that my kids, my family members can all go get the books. This is coming from, we don't like these books. You need to do something so my kids can't find them.
Yeah.
So
They're gonna be so much easier.
well, so that's
I
the
know.
thing. What is then in that case, since I'm not banning books, we're continuing to follow our collection development policy. We did have a community member who let us know old statistics of current LGBTQ demographics in Crook County. So we are meeting a community need by ordering these titles. We are not going to stop ordering them in a way that makes sense for this library. I have had like hours-long conversations with Jen, our children's librarian, about how she literally keeps like a tally of every book that she orders, how frequently she's ordering them, whether or not that review says suitable for larger libraries, suitable for all collections. So it's like the books are not going to stop because it's our duty to order them. Just like we are ordering books on Christianity. And I thought that was kind of an interesting overlay again with what.
Are you
what he said.
ordering books on abortion or gun rights?
So
or
probably
hunting
not
or
for the
anything?
kids' room, because if that's where like the suggestion for purchase form comes in. So we are able to look at books like christianbooks.com and find books that are published on these topics for children. So Jen did order a pro-life children's book that was given for this age group. So if the books are out there and we're able to get them, we're doing our best to do that balance.
Are there any hunting like?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
tons,
yeah.
tons.
And they get checked out.
Yeah, yep, super
Shan,
popular.
What do you think would be the solution to calm down this energy and have the library move forward successfully?
Well, I think that solution. I think labeling them, I agree with April. I think labeling, I don't see like with the DVD collection or the Hispanic collection or the food, if you go into like for dietary needs, those are all in one section. Christianity books, I mean, if you go into Barnes and Noble, I was just in there, they have Catholic books, Wicca books, all the Christianities are separated. There's sections for every single thing, like all the books, like faith books are not intermingled. They're mingled by what, like, are you Mormon?
Well,
Are
the
you
children's
Jewish?
section, it's fiction, nonfiction,
So,
graphic novels. and
yeah,
then the
I think,
LGBTQ.
I mean, my personal thing for my children is I would like to see them on a shelf. There's a difference between a shelf and a display. I would think a display would be, that's why I asked if you displayed them. Because if you did like a display for a Day of the Dead or Pride Month, that's like a display, because I know you do it for new books or I'm not
we
sure
do
if you
have
like for veterans. That's a display where you have it out and it's visual and you decorate it. But just to put like, the Hispanic books are all back in one section and
If you drop your
puberty
kids off at
books.
the library and you wanted them to avoid that shelf, what would you tell them?
Well, I probably wouldn't drop my kids off at that age. I mean, I would be with them. I'd probably accompany them.
Are Hispanic books, or are those those books are in Spanish?
Correct. So it's a
Right,
Spanish
it's
language
not like, oh,
collection.
well, we're gonna put that, no.
It's not
those
a
are Spanish.
thematic collection.
Right, because that would be problematic.
Yeah,
in
correct.
that
But what would you tell about the shelf?
Right, you
Well, I
come in,
would,
you
I
walk
would
there,
just
just
say
browse
that
it.
if
Don't go.
this is a shelf that if you want to check out a book, then you need to come and I'll look at it with you, just the same as I would about a puberty book or, I mean, the thing that bothered me about the puberty books is that I actually checked some out and they're really good, but I have a 12-year-old, but it's my 3-year-old who grabbed the puberty book and started looking, and it had a section on how to masturbate. And it really bothered me that my 3-year-old could grab that book off the shelf. So that would be like a parent, that's a parent's decision. I think that's what that gentleman was saying, like, let the parents make the decision.
So you would just say like, if it's from this shelf, I have to review it first.
Yeah, or like, let's look at it. Let's, decide if this is something that fits into our, I'm sure if your
Do you think
child
it would
went and
highlight
grabbed
it?
a book though on like pro-life activism, or maybe, Almeda King, Dr. Martin Luther King's niece who writes children's pro-life books. If your child went and got a book on that, or maybe a book on baptism or something, I mean, is that something as a parent, if your child said, hey, what's baptism, or what's pro-life, or what's this? As a parent,
I
that's
don't find
your,
those topics offensive at all.
yeah, the thing
I
that
would read those books to my children.
yeah, the thing that I find offensive is graphic sexual content. And I think that's the thing, like,
But that's
showing.
not,
Yeah, and I don't
It's
think that's what's
not
gonna be on the book.
fiction.
I'm just really concerned this shelf isn't gonna address the concern.
Got a place in the library you could put them?
So that would be the big question, because it is challenging.
So that would be the question. Because you're separating it in a way that's not equally accessible.
Yeah.
to all.
What would you
And
do, Natalie? I mean, what would you do?
I think the point about let me review your books before you get them, I can't help but compare it to YouTube. Like, I am the parent that, hey, I gotta go in the other room for a minute. Here's your tablet, go for it. And I come back in and all of a sudden, yesterday, my daughter was watching this show called Gabby's Dollhouse. It wasn't offensive, but I wouldn't have picked it. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, I need some more oversight here.
There's children's YouTube.
You reach a point
Yeah.
where like the internet has a lot of things. And
Yeah,
so
and then you
how
have
would I?
pop-ups, like you have, so
Yeah.
like it's
That's
hard.
why I
to-
use television as an example, right?
Yeah,
And
so
you
I
can
mean, I
go-
think I would just educate in the moment, but I wouldn't censor.
Yeah.
So,
And
I
I
come
think
to the
some
library with my
parents want,
kids.
yeah, and I think, and that is what stirred the issue with the Steams pillar, is that my daughter came without a parent.
Yeah.
And she found these books, and they're not something, if I would have been with her, it would have been different. Because I could have said, okay, let's talk about this, let's look at this, but it really bothered her, because then she had me come back to the library. Because it really bothered her, and it happened with a couple other kids.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't with her, and I think that is the issue. It's a parent's right to bring their kids to the library. And not at any time has anybody asked for the books to be removed or not to represent. I mean, it's important that every.
Yeah, I think education on
community,
how
yeah,
to
it's-
be a parent is the angle, and I don't know how to say that in a very nice PC way, but like, here's how you get oversight. That's the angle I would take.
But there's age appropriateness, so, and I think April kind of hit on that with the puberty books, and with Jen being selective of like, yeah, what's okay, because that is a big age gap from 0 to 10. So what's appropriate for a 10-year-old is not appropriate for a 3-year-old.
Well, and
So
there,
your kids are grabbing
there's a wide range
things,
in this community of what people think is appropriate when it
Yeah.
comes to
and
sexual
that's a
education.
parenting issue. Yeah, some people.
Some
could
people
care
think you're
less,
not
some
supposed to
people-
talk about the vagina or the vulva or any parts of it,
Yeah.
not touch it or look at it. And it's hard from my perspective as a family care provider to train people how to clean it.
Yeah.
Like, it's very
Right.
hard to have conversations about vulva. So in my opinion, I want the vulva and the clitoris on every wall. I want to talk about it. Here's what it is. This is a
There's a
penis.
new book about.
I'm
Heard
all,
about
like, we
that?
have all the puberty books at my house. And if my child was reading a book on masturbation, I'd be like, this is something adults do. You only do this in the bathroom or in your bedroom. We don't play with our private parts in the kitchen. Those conversations.
Yeah.
We have those
But for a
conversations.
3-year-old or a 12-year-old?
Well, I do have a conversation with my 2-year-old.
Yeah. And
they're
see, I would
curious
never
about
have
She
that
was sitting
conversation
playing with
with my-
herself the other day, and I just said, this is appropriate for the bathroom, but just make sure you please don't do this in the living room or the kitchen.
Yeah.
She
And
wasn't
so
masturbating.
I think and so then you go to like, I mean, it's just like a parent's choice. So like from a religious perspective, masturbation is like a sin, right? So a lot of the people that are coming here from Crook County would say, we're not going to teach our kids to masturbate, but then that comes down to like a parental discussion, and the library should be a place where non-masturbating parents and masturbating parents should be able to come and, I mean, I don't know how else more clearly to say it, but that's a parent's choice of what you teach your children. And you don't want your kids exposed to something that you're not ready age appropriately to let them see or talk about. I mean, the same thing is like, I would never, we just went to Disney World. My 4-year-old, I did not take her on the Tower of Terror. She's deathly afraid of witches and ghosts and anything like that. My older kids, they went on it, they were fine. But I knew that was something that was going to give her nightmares. It wasn't the ride itself. It was just like, oh man, I don't want to listen to her for 3 days crying about this. So just, but some 4-year-olds were on there. So you have to know the child, and it really comes down to the parents. So I think
that's the only solution is
and I
encouraging parenting.
And I think that actually gets it. So you're gonna go to Disney and tell them you need a parent committee running which rides are accessible to which children and which ones can go there. Or they'll make some decisions based on height or weight, or someone can go there. But it was your parental involvement for your child.
Yeah, and that's the
on that,
problem
but
with the library, that there's not parental involvement if you drop your kids off. Or
So-
if the school brings them.
Well, then you shouldn't drop them
No,
off.
I agree, but the school came and there was no parents here.
So
Yes,
maybe,
yes.
maybe the proposal to the community is no children allowed in the library without parents.
No.
I was gonna say, that's what I just heard.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
I mean, it sounds like we have to have a community forum. We need to listen to people, but I think we have to be clear with what we can and can't do from the beginning. And then set the expectations that when we leave here, all these books will still be in the collection, just so you know, and all these books will still be available to all. They will not be.
And I don't think anybody's
Just
asking them to
outlining
be
that.
removed. I know, but I haven't
Well,
heard.
I think
any-
there's
Oh,
interest
that's
in
all
other
I didn't-
Yeah, I mean,
I think
we'll
it's
hear
like
it too.
clear, like what the law is. So if there's something, and that can be written out, right, what the law is around all of this. What the responsibilities and duties of the board are. And where that goes.
I'm just concerned if
And
we end a
then-
forum by saying,
and then
here's a
organize.
special shelf. There will be some very mad people if they don't understand the context of why that.
Yeah,
decision
no,
is
I think the
made.
discussion needs to be made, but I think just really clear about, are they asking for something that's outside the purview?
It's
of
not,
what-
it's legal. He said it's legal to make a shelf.
Yeah, but I just think the
But-
shelf is gonna make so many people unhappy.
How many
Well-
people, you're gonna have more people unhappy, because I would
We're-
say 70% of this community is super upset.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to please everyone. We're just not. But right now, we're offending everyone by not appearing to care about doing anything.
And that's the point. What I'm trying to say here is you provide the information, provide an organized forum so people can be heard. And you may be telling them something that they aren't happy with, but they'll understand where that information
Can we
is
ask
coming from.
the attorney to speak at the forum before public comments and then maybe again after?
Are we beating a dead horse?
Is there a
Shouldn't
mo-
we
is
just
there a mod-
show up to a forum and say these are the
a
things that
moderator?
the board came up with?
Well,
as
that's
a
the
committee?
thing.
A
we would
mediator, a
probably hire
professional
one.
mediator.
I think the county would probably for this would need to engage with one.
Yeah.
If we don't go to a meeting with a proposal, I think we'll.
I think we
lose the
need a
game.
meeting and then we talk as a board. And maybe
Yeah,
create
I
proposals.
think hearing the community, like,
Yeah.
you know, hearing
them.
everything they.
We heard
Well, there were a lot of
them.
people who said they didn't get to speak.
I know, but I mean, I have to agree with Jerry on this. I think you have to, as a board, we have to come up with a couple proposals and then present it. And then if that goes awry, then, I mean, because the attorney clearly said that a lot of people are zoomed in. He clearly said it's legal to put them in a section. So we need to move forward with doing something for the community, but keep on dragging it out. It's like beating a dead
Right.
horse. This has been
So then
going
that
on
means
since May.
our
and it's
next
just
meeting or
gonna-
whatever needs to be about what that would be, because we may not all be on the same page as far as how we feel about.
Yeah, so maybe April, could you come up with a couple different things and then we vote on it, or, I mean, what would that look like?
I would probably just put forth the labeling scheme and the shelf and sketch out. I guess it depends on what you'd want to help inform that decision.
Devil's advocate says, then you need a label on all the books with heterosexual
That's exactly
relationships
right.
too.
That's
So,
exactly right.
warning heteronormative content here.
That's why labels are really problematic.
Right, because.
Think about it and talk with your staff.
So
We've been doing nothing but talking about this.
But you know what? This, if we don't make some progress, this isn't going away.
Well, I would like to see the list of the 35 books and better understand that. I'm still really fearful of backlash over what's chosen and not chosen.
Yeah, so you could go to our catalog and just in the keyword search on the top, just do LGBTQ and then limit it. So since we share with Deschutes and Madras, you want to limit it to Crook County and then limit it to our juvenile collection. And then that is where the 35 books will come.
Okay, question. Now,
Was reading
we're
what he
only
said.
talking about the 35 books that are in the children's sections. We are not talking anything about the teen section
Or the adult collection.
or the
Correct.
adult
Correct.
section. Okay, so
I think, may I say something really fast? Because I feel like I represent a lot of what the community thinks on this topic. I think if you guys propose to them that you put it on a shelf, I think they would be very happy. I really do. I think that's all they're asking is to be heard. I do think, however, if you say, yeah, we'll put it on a shelf, but we're gonna have it displayed where everyone can see, I think you're gonna get that again. So I think if you could come up with something that's meeting halfway, like you said, I really agree with you. I think the community would be very happy. I don't think, from what I gather and people I've spoken to, they're not trying to ban the books. They just want them appropriate for their children.
And I know he said separating, you can't separate or like put somewhere inconvenient, like a bottom shelf, or have it somewhere out of the way like that. And you can't favor one viewpoint over another nor limit access.
So maybe
terms of
one
the law.
approach is, once a proposal has been drafted, to run it by the attorney and see whether he thinks that meets constitutional muster.
Yeah, I mean, I can, but he's gonna say it's fine to make a shelf.
And that's.
It's just so.
You can make the shelf, just don't put it down at the bottom or put it on
Yeah.
an awkward corner.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Well,
ask.
so
Is
you're-
she was saying that the open location is right at the front of the children's library.
If you're two, the bottom shelf actually might be quite convenient.
For a child.
Are you talking
Well, and
about
that's
where
why
it's
we
like
just
this?
chopped all the
Or
shelves in
like
half
this?
so that
So you're
everybody
talking
could get
about
to the
where you
books.
come in and Right.
April, did you just say it would go where like the AV?
Well, just one thought that we had today when we were looking to avoid having to chop up collections, to move entire ranges of material, or to avoid the feeling of restricted access would be where our current children's audiobook collection is, which is in the front range where new items are.
By the snake?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the puppet theater.
So
Yes,
just
okay,
kind of
thank you.
a child interaction behavioral type thing. So you've got your shelf and you've got a child who's going over there and selecting a book. What are the other children doing to that child while they're selecting that book that's on that shelf of 35, that they're going through the books, they're curious. They want to know those things. What might the experience of that child be in the library?
Yeah,
in
that was
terms of
something
peers?
I brought to the meeting with Court and the attorney was it's a more complicated matter than just the constitutionality because of that situation and the unsafe situation that puts somebody
'cause
in.
that
If they're
would
not prepared to be seen browsing those materials.
Exactly. And so when we're talking about a safe place for everyone to come.
That goes both ways.
Well, what do they do when they get a book on puberty or something like that? I mean, those are in a section, so is that labeling a child, or if they go
That's
get a?
I don't think
Hispanic?
puberty is stigmatized the way that
No,
LGBTQ
but
plus
they-
topics are.
But what about a child who goes to get like a Spanish language book, and are they gonna make fun of them for not speaking English or say rude things to them? Like, I don't really follow.
Let's-
Like, I don't either. I think you're like way overthinking something that's super simple. We're talking about parental rights. Any parent can go on Amazon and order their kid any book that they want.
Right.
And if kids feel like, I mean, my son would go get books on Legos or airplanes or yada yada, and maybe kids thought that was dorky. To
But do
like
many kids
the
commit
superheroes.
suicide over
Right.
their choice of Legos or their choice of diet or
Well, yeah, I think
issues of
there's
identity.
anorexic kids. I think there's kids that have like over
Are they
divorce.
killed for choosing the
Are-
wrong Lego?
So your position is do nothing.
No, I want to hear what everybody has to say. I do feel there's some specifics within the law and the access of the full community. I think we get to the issue of parental involvement is huge. And if this is that big of an issue in the community, then we need parental involvement in the book selection process as it's occurring. I know it's not practical, but you're alienating another population based on who they are. And they experience violence and murder and all kinds of things for this in there. So I'm not saying where I'm coming down on all these things. I do believe we need to hear people's points of view in an organized setting. And we've been hearing them. And to bring out some of this and address, I know, again, some misinformation on that clearly, that there wasn't some conspiracy of mad ordering of LGBTQ books. Oh, good, we're closed, we're in lockdown, now we can really do this.
So in order to put that myth to rest, can we just please pull the 35 books and find the dates on which they were ordered? Because that would tell whether or not they were brought in during the shutdown.
That doesn't matter.
doesn't
Maybe one
matter.
book replaced a book that was
It
ordered.
like
does
one-
matter
it's like
because
one
the
book.
library was shut to the public, so the public perception.
The library was shut to the public for 6 weeks.
And does
Okay.
it,
But we were still serving people.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
were we
yeah.
allowed to come in, were parents, you were not allowed to use the children's room. It was
but the
more than
ordering
6
goes on
weeks, I
all the
believe.
time.
Right,
It's not
right.
like,
I
okay, we're-
understand, but what the problem is with the community is that between 2020 and 2022, all the books got brought in. So you're saying that they weren't.
no, they didn't. There were
Okay, well, then all
some
I'm saying
new-
is then take the list of the 35 and let's have the dates of what they were ordered and put that rumor to rest. So that you don't have that back
So,
and forth of the community saying, because a lot of people.
some of them might have been replacement books, some of them
Well,
might
but
have
the
been.
woman, the woman who came in
It's not
that
that
spoke
unfortunate.
last time, she had no clue because she hadn't been to the library since COVID, or, I mean, that was my impression with her. And that's why Laquita got upset because there was like a cross of stuff that had already been brought up. Because those books weren't there.
So
Even the
there's this,
superintendent of Crook County School District told me personally that she never saw those kind of books in here prior to 2020.
so there's a dangerous LGBTQ difference conspiracy going on. That
Why
when
are you
people
being
are-
so condescending? You're not being a very.
I'm not, I'm playing devil's advocate here, and it's true.
You're not being productive. You're being disrespectful and argumentative and interrupting everybody. And the chair is supposed to be running the meeting, not you. Ask some questions.
This is
And-
a discussion
and-
period of the board.
This started as a
And
request for an agenda item for the next meeting. How do we move forward with this?
Yes, let's do.
And my suggestion was a proposal.
Yeah, I think what I'll bring to the next board. Okay, can you, okay, what I'm gonna do for the next meeting,
She's assigning attitudes to us that were
Please,
not expressed
please,
tonight. Laquita.
Public comment period is over. Let's
And
hear.
it's not a heterosexual or a homosexual thing. I can speak for these people, and we don't want heterosexual sex books with pictures
Right,
for our 5-year-olds anymore than we want homosexual sex. It's the sexualizing young children.
Thank you.
Agenda item for the next meeting is a proposal from the staff
From staff.
about moving forward with this.
Got it.
And
Yeah, good, good. I'd love to hear that from the staff.
And a Valiant prescription for April.
And I would like to see the 35 LGBTQ books with the dates of when they were ordered. Just out of curiosity, please.
do you care about publication date?
No, if I care when they were ordered and brought into Crook County Library.
How about if they're a replacement for a book that was already here and maybe damaged, and so.
Sure. Sure, but when I pulled the list, there was 35 in the children's section, so I would just like to see when they were ordered. Thank you.
Just when you go down the list, like they were all published in 2000, 2001, 2002. Or sorry, 21. I'm really good at numbers.
I mean, there is also
21,
the
22.
greater publishing world context to lay on this because diversity, equity, and inclusion is a very strong trend in publishing. So the fact is that not only there are more books around these topics now than there were even 5 years ago.
True.
So I mean, I've been in youth services in libraries for 15 years before coming to this job. We just didn't even have that many books to choose from, you know, leading up to the 2020s. So
Yeah, there've been more incentives for that, for writers out there. Grants.
Also, could we have a little more direction here?
Yeah, they
Staff?
got brought in because they were published.
That's okay.
That's okay,
Well,
just tell the
Natalie,
truth.
You said it was
Natalie.
because of the.
We need to make a plan here. Are we gonna request these proposals from staff for our next regular meeting? And
Yes.
then we will discuss having a public hearing where the proposals can be presented to the population. at large?
I'd like to hear a proposal
Okay,
and then we can discuss it. And what we can tell the community at large is that we've heard them, we've taken it seriously, and the board is looking at proposals to meet their concerns.
And still allow public hearing at the next meeting.
so no, not at the next
Ju-
meeting.
Well, I don't know that we can shut that down.
yeah, I mean,
but-
public comment is required as
Yeah.
part of our.
So
meeting,
maybe
so.
just like here, except use your gavel at the end of the 15-minute comment period. I don't know.
No,
but-
what I'm saying though, we need to discuss the proposals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that we can present it to the public.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
we can't sit here in this room on December whatever and discuss it without making time for comments, which will get us off track. So can we not have a regular public comment severely limited and let the public know we will plan a big thing. It'll have to be January by then because December's.
But maybe we can start by saying, we're going to discuss a proposal tonight. You can comment if you like in the first 15 minutes, but we've heard you and we've come up with an approach. And we'd like to discuss it and think about implementing it before. And
What if we scheduled the public hearing?
Well, I'm not sure if we need one. So what I'm hearing
Yeah.
is the good faith effort of the library to meet the community and recognize the concern. Sounds like creating a shelf would be a great thing. What I would like to do then in December is bring the proposal for what this collection looks like, what kind of policy and procedure it may impact for us, because we will have to recatalog, we will have to reorganize, we will have to relabel. So there'll be a whole workflow that will have to go along with this, because otherwise they're not findable if they're not cataloged properly, which then is a restriction on access. So anyway, so we can bring the proposed location for the shelf, the cataloging, the process changes that we'll have to make, the number of books that this will impact, the number, is this just books or I mean, I don't think we have, there was that movie with the evil gay prince in it, but
start with 31 books.
okay. That was an adult title anyway, okay.
Okay. Maybe
So
some
I think if I
scenarios.
bring the proposal, it will be in the packet. So one thing that I'm also really struggling with sharing information with the community is that the board packet often contains material up for discussion in the meeting, and it provides information and insight into what we're talking about. And there's just the county website's a nightmare, finding agendas is difficult, but if we are, now that more and more people are engaged with the calendars, they know where to look for times, they know where to look for this stuff. The proposal would be in the packet. So then it's essentially public review at that point. People can come, we will ask Seth for help in finding a better meeting spot for December so that we have more space. We can do public comment. The proposal will be under new business. At this point, we won't have any old business. We won't really have anything to do in December except work on the new business. So then I feel like that would show the good faith of like, we've had, months of public comment. We hear this is what we're going to do for our proposal. There will be additional public comment. We are still engaging with people who are still here. So I don't know if we need to do a separate meeting if the December meeting is just kind of committed to the proposal and the discussion.
And
of
please
what
give
that
us an
looks like.
opportunity to see if it meets your needs.
Yeah,
And I think too, Natalie just brought up a good fact, or a good point, and most of the books that came in weren't published until 2021 or
Correct.
2022, so we're not gonna make everybody happy. And so for the LGB community, people that are excited about having these books, it's important to bring that up to the fact that what you just said, that the books aren't going away and you're not restricting access or the books, and that there's more books that are now available because they weren't available in the past. But there has to be a compromise that is good for everybody in the community.
Amen.
So that, I mean, nobody's gonna be
Will
happy.
the proposal
100%.
include a way to review new books on whether or not they need to be in the new collection?
So this is why libraries have a collection development, and I'm trying really hard not to just shut this down. A community review board for materials
No.
selection is not
No.
appropriate for public
No.
libraries.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially establishing an additional advisory committee for which there are no guidelines around. It is not library best practice to do that. If it were a private collection with private donors, that's one thing. But it would involve a search process. I mean, talk about pulling something out. It just would be, and I don't mean to say that like, oh, big libraries don't do that. Like Burns doesn't do it. St. Helens doesn't do it. Athena doesn't do it. Like people, a community review board for new books is not common practice for libraries.
But anything that fell into that same LGBTQ search category would go to this collection?
I guess that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, you order it from an LGBTQ collection, correct?
No, we order it from the vendors, like what's in the packet there with the animal on front. So that's a page from Baker and Taylor. There's a page from Ingram. And then
Kinda
there's
like
like
Scholastic,
the
or whatever,
ALA
it's
notable,
just
yeah,
kind of,
exactly, they're a vendor. And so then they get the books from the publishers and we use professional publications to review.
But
and
they are
consider.
labeled like LGBTQ, because when you pull it up.
Yeah, right. So when
they're
they get
gonna have
cataloged,
LGBTQ content.
when they get cataloged, there is somebody in a really nerdy office in OCLC who day in and day out is their job to assign subject headings to newly published materials. So if something came in that did have that subject heading, then yes, based on what we write for the policy around this new collection, that's why it gets kind of hairy, because it's like, okay, what is going? Is it something with that subject heading? Is it something by a known gay author? Is it something, and I'm not, this
Looks
is
all
not
of
like
these have that same
overthinking.
Subject
You're
LGBTQ
overthinking.
people, but.
I
yeah.
just don't think it's fine. It's fine.
Don't overthink it.
But that will have to be in the policy. What
Let's
we-
start
this is like-
somewhere.
That's kind of maybe what we'll discuss at that meeting.
Good
maybe,
idea.
Is some of that,
Yeah.
right? We've got some scenarios, some like fiscal implications, some other kind of time implications, some others to consider all that. Yeah,
Sounds good.
Excellent idea.
thank you.
What if you guys started with the initial 35 and then maybe down the
Yeah.
road, if a parent brought one to your attention that you didn't realize was inappropriate and you look through it, oh, it is, we'll add that to the shelf.
I like that.
We know what we're doing?
Yep.
Okay,
I move we adjourn.
you got it.
Wow,
What time is it? 7:25?
we don't want to keep doing
I don't know, and
this.
all clocks haven't been changed in some places. I know.
Yeah.
That one has, you're